Yes. So, yeah, welcome everyone. So, this is our initiative called Spot Fix. It is a faculty empowerment initiative which we are doing under the multiple projects that we are working on currently for faculty. So, at heart, Spot Fix is about precision and partnership. So, what we are trying to do here is to identify a specific need or a requirement a college has, and then we collaborate and try to come up with certain directions or actionable support for the faculty, and also invariably also took us down to the students in the college. So we are hosting this session in association with Rain Matter, and it represents a vital step in our mission, which we're carrying throughout in all our projects. So today's topic is architectural sites as gender domains. So this is the first stage of a two-part initiative. So the first part is, of course, this panel discussion, where we are trying to understand the challenges and experiences both from faculty. So we have BNCA and IG Indira Gandhi Delhi here. So it's both are women-only colleges, and they might be going. The challenges might be a little different, maybe when it comes to these colleges, and we're also looking at understanding what the architects go through on site once they graduate and go to offices. So we have a good plethora of architects right here who can share their experiences with us. And the second part of this will be a tangible capacity building activity for the students of both these colleges, which can then also become a toolkit for educators later on. So before the students go for their internships, or even they graduate and go out and start working, this could be a toolkit that the faculty use as a capacity building thing. It can be a part of the pedagogy itself, maybe for every year. So we believe that it's very important for us to have these dialogues, and also have shared learning, and empower educators to collectively shape a more dynamic and relevant educational landscape. And for a strong foundation, it is also important for us to have a very, education it's a cornerstone for that, and such conversations will help build that up. And through this initiative, we are also trying to bridge the gap between the site realities and the classroom pedagogy, ultimately helping build a more robust framework for the next generation of learners. So we are very much aware that, when it comes to conversations around gender, it is very complex, it is intersectional, and it encompasses a vast plethora of situations. So while the umbrella of gender in architecture is wide, for the benefit of the colleges, and because we have a time constraint today, we are only focusing on trying to understand, the physical and professional navigation of the construction site and offices. So we are looking at the transition from student to practitioner and the unique dynamics women face in these spaces. So even though this is a very large, a small piece of a larger puzzle, but it is a very critical one. I think we all need to maybe start talking about. So before we start the discussion, I would like to quickly introduce the panel. So we have Professor Dr. Shruti S. Joshi from BNCA. She's Professor and Director of the BNCA International Cell. We have Professor Mahesh Bangat, who is Associate Professor at BNCA. We have Professor Vishal Rai, who is the Associate Professor at IG, DTUW Delhi. We have Architect Amrita Balal, who is an urban planner and founding partner at Space Matters Delhi. We have Architect Meghna Kulkarni from MNP Architects Collaborative Pune. And we have Architect Nikita and Sama Shetty from SJK Architects Mumbai. So along with them, we also have others who have joined us. We have Jaya from SJK. We have Miss Ragini Rao, who is a psychologist from Infinum Growth. So she will be listening to this conversation, also giving us certain inputs on capacity building later on once the conversation is over. And so I also, I think, have other faculties joining us from these colleges. So welcome all of you to this panel. So before I start the questions, just to quickly give you an outline, we have divided into 4 rounds. So each round has one maximum of 2 questions. So we start with identifying the site challenges from the experiences of architect, as well as the faculty experience through their interactions that they've had with their students. And then we try to understand the infrastructure and economics of it, again, that comes from the experiences. Then the psychological resilience and navigating bias. And finally, we discuss on what the capacity building activity can be, a small brainstorming session. So each of them we'll be timing. My colleague Ritik will be timing us, so we are able to cover a larger ground also within the 2 hours. So, okay, so that is the background. So let us now move on to the questions. So the first round, we are trying to understand the site as a social construct. So my first question will be to the faculties here. So when you take a bus full of female students to site, so have you seen any vibe shift in the students' body language, or even, the people on the site? Can you tell a little bit about this experience? So I think Professor Mahesh, if you want to start with this.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us on this panel. And of course, it's very interesting that we are doing this talk. It's rather late to do all of this. We should have this in the academic circuit and also in the profession. We should have been doing this maybe 5, 7 years ago. But there's a dynamic shift in the entire way females are handling construction sites. I'm sure Meghna would agree that she often has to become the boss at the site in terms of commanding. But when you take students to such construction sites or build sites also, the body language shifts from there's this sense of fear in terms of accessing unknown territory is one. And two, I believe what happens is a lot of times students have preconceived notions about visiting sites. So when we spoke about selecting a site and going to a empty site also for a design problem, students often lose orientation of the context at times, one. Two, there is always this sense of, will I get a permission? Should I be accessing? Whom should I be asking? Will that person sort of entertain me? So there's this always insecurity about not having enough access or easy getting things easily done. Lastly, I also want to point out that when you take a bus full of students to a site, a pre-orientation always helps. I think this we could put on record, because what happens is to suddenly take them to an unknown territory, it doesn't give them that sense of confidence to express themselves also and observe also. So maybe a pre-orientation to all of them will sort of create a better mental environment that is required for them to access all of these spaces. And currently, my observation of being a professor at a girls' college, of course, is that the inhibitions have become lesser. The current generation is a little more dynamic in terms of accessing and in terms of orienting themselves when they go to unknown territories. But of course, there is this sense of a little sense of insecurity and fear still exists.
Yeah, Professor Vishal, do you want to?
Yeah. Hello, good morning, everyone. First of all, I agree with Professor Mahesh in what he said, that we must have a little bit of pre-orientation kind of thing before we go on to site. Actually, I'm teaching at an all women, all girls institution, and we have been taking students to site. I would say almost every year we go on a site visit outside Delhi, and we go to these different cities. And in terms of experience, I have a little bit different kind of experience. I find that gradually, when we work with the community, with the society, with the people, this thing, like when we go to the site, when we go outside, I find that our students are very confident. Yes, we want to go, we want to do it. It would be better if I explain this with an example. In the year, I think 2018, we went to a very remote village in Uttarakhand, in the Rudraprayag district. I would say it was near Kedarnath area. And I would tell you, we took two batches of architecture students, all girls, to this remote village called Sari village, which is in a very remote area in Uttarakhand. And as sir said, that pre-orientation and these things help. So definitely when we first started this thing that we want to go to a site like this, there were all questions around this key. Oh, how will we go to such remote area? It would not be safe and all that. So actually, what we did was we ensured that we planned it in a very meticulous manner. We did all the kind of pre-orientations and all. So before we started for the trip, like you asked, what happens when the student, how the vibes change when the students board the buses. So we experienced before going that students were very confident, enthusiastic, and they were like saying, Ki, we want to go and we want to do this. And I tell you, it was a very difficult journey. We had to go travel by train, then we had to travel by bus to that remote hilly area. It was a small village. And then we did not stop at that village. We even ventured into some very remote areas, and we faced a lot of issues. But my experience was that when all these girls were together, there were definitely, when you go outside, even if it is boys, you always face some issues, some challenges of traveling and all those things. So they were never like this key, no, 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 we should not have come here, it is risky, it is this and it is that. They were all very confident. They all faced these challenges. They all talked to the local community there. We had some incidences also, like some student got hurt and we had to rush to hospital and all that. But this did not, make them rethink, okay, we should not have come. Rather, they were very proud of being there. And we obviously, these kind of things were there. Should we, by what time should we come back, and how much time we should spend in the field and all that was there. But yes, I experienced this, that the girls, they wanted to do this, and they interacted with the local community in such a confident manner. They had food with them, they worked with at late. I remember we were staying in a in some kind of tents, and there was no electricity, but the students were, and it was very cold, but the students, they said, no sir, we want to discuss what we have done today. So we literally had to use our those torches to work on their sheets, and we used those torches and we worked on their sheets and discussed what they did in the morning. So yes, definitely, actually, I would say that our society, there are a lot of notions which are there in our heads. Okay, we should do this, we should not do this. What will happen when the girls will board the bus, and they will feel unsafe, they will feel insecure. But if we have these proper dialogues with the community, with the people, I think we can work around these notions, and things can come out really well. And I've seen this, like when we came back, the students, they said, sir, we want to put up an exhibition of this. We did a very huge exhibition. It was very widely appreciated. School, even faculty from SPA visited, and uh, people from far off places also came to see our exhibition. So yes, I would say I've experienced this also. I would say that the vibes change if we have a positive note, and if we work with okay, this, it's not like this key, okay, if it is all girls, we cannot do this, or the girls will not be able to travel to such far off places, or they will be scared when they board the buses, they will not enjoy the trip because they will be more scared of. So when we gave them this confidence, and they understood that yes, it's not that only boys or only men can go to these places and work. So we had a tremendous experience. We also published a book on it. So
Okay.
yes, so
Yeah.
vibes, like, as we think notionally that okay, the girls may be scared in doing this. They might be, when they travel to these places, they might feel ki, okay, whom will we meet? But if we work, like sir said, ki pre-orientation and meticulous planning and all these things, and I would say that there's nothing that can stop the girls. They're very confident. Actually, we should have these dialogues with them, that we can do this. And I had a very good experience in that case.
Thank you, Professor Vishal. So, I think to add to this, just another question. So this is like, we are speaking about groups going out and everything. Professor Shruti, you can take this up maybe. Have you had any big, you know, like a reality check or something where students have come back, especially when they've gone for internships or maybe even after graduation, they've gone out to work, and any experiences where they have come back and told you about how they felt when they went to the site first or anything around that?
Yeah, I was just going to get back to that. The reality check, in the sense, when you are in a group, it's a different story. The students are definitely very enthusiastic. There is always a pre-session which orients them. But what we do find is, especially when they go out for internships, what is happening is we need to encourage more site or internships rather than just office internships. That's one important thing, because there's a cultural bias, or there is a cultural barrier, we could say, where, kind of executive labor is more for men, and mental or intellectual labor more for women. Of course, this notion is definitely reducing, but at the same time, it's very essential that when a woman or a girl goes out as an individual, she has to definitely learn that it is through her maybe voice, posture, command over her subject, that is going to matter a lot. And we do find that there have been issues at times where these students, when they went to the offices, they were kind of handed over the mediocre work, and it was only when they requested for on-site visits and more to do with communication, because communication is another important aspect of this basically architectural profession. I think it's very important for the students to understand that architecture is where you have the architect as a neutral expert, and the profession should not be kind of mediated through gender. And this they do come across in many places when they are dealt with. So rather than talking more of the success stories, I would also definitely want to have where the students, especially when they're out on internship, they did have issues in terms of dealing with their bosses, in terms of allocation of the work, and allowed to participate in more on-site or more communicative and communication work. So this is where the students are, kind of, when they talk to us, we encourage them to speak up openly about their issues and get an access to these things. One important thing I find that if the students are not sure or are not familiar with the material, with the drawings, with the detailing, then there is a sense of what I would say, their whole posture lacks that confidence. So it is equally essential that the girls go with deep understanding, with deep study, and not superficially. So as a group, yes, it makes a big difference when you are there collectively. But as an individual, there is a lot of reality to be understood. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Shruti. I would request Architect Amrita Ballal to maybe take this, So my question was actually about the experiences that you've had. You have worked on site previously, and now you also have your own firm. So can you give an insight on what Shruti ma'am just said? You've seen both the sides of it as a boss and, like as someone who has also maybe have experienced site today and when in the earlier years. So yeah.
Sorry, just lost you for a second. Thanks, Ramya. Thank you for having me on this panel. It's as mentioned by Professor Mahesh, long due, I would say more than 6, 7 years maybe 6, 7 decades. Um, I would just, before I answer your question, Ramya, just sort of like really maybe clarify for me some context things born of, as you said, experience and different roles as a student, as an intern, and someone's running the practice. Um, One thing that I would like to do is also, not center this around why we are trying to enable the students and young practitioners. I would not like to center this conversation just exclusively around how they can be empowered and how they can deal with things better, because there are two very flip sides to it. I think gender is a conversation across the world. Like, I mean, even in places like friends of mine in Scandinavia, where you think they have really good stats, we'll talk about how gender sort of works into architecture as much as any other domain. But in India, we have a specific condition where, it's almost like you're dealing with civilizational issues as well as jungle issues simultaneously. I mean, I won't throw the stats of sexual violence in India, because that will be a vibe shift, as Ramya said. But uh, one has to understand that before, one is talking about confidence and knowledge, is that every woman, and if you're saying 1 in 4 has gone through sexual violence, is in the domain of architecture, especially, where you have to not just think about and abstractly imagine, you have to put your body into these spaces. You are factoring this kind of violence as a normalization, as a really abstract normalization, in terms of your day-to-day existence, forget at least professionally, and it remains unarticulated. Because also, what do you do? Because that's the flip side of it. You're not in a war zone. uh, at the same time, all you're expecting someone is to be knowledgeable, is to be confident. Like, and someone, Professor Shruti actually mentioned posture. You'll notice that most Indian women actually learn to pull back their posture, because you were trying to physically sort of uh, disembody yourself from space, and then how do you actually have the confidence to shape space? So there is this whole thing, and then there is, of course, the other aspect, that if you sort of just normalize it and you make a baseline, that when you go to site, there are aspects of confidence, credibility, communication, about having a voice. And that has a lot to do with also, representation. Do you see women on site? um, Engineers are almost exclusively civil engineering. Like, at college level, women are said that you don't take on engineering because you'll be sent to random sites. Labor on site, I know that in some of my sites, the fix to catering for women on site is to say that the contractors will hire, I mean, this is not from our side, but from like clients and large organizations, to say there'll be no women on site. Because to deal with the swing that can happen in this sort of really like normalized violence that our society has, is that tumhare ko, if you see women, uh, you'll see them actually with very little shelter, with no public sanitation, all of that. The bad situation of Indian sites gets worse. So we're really sort of operating in this kind of thing, and you have like these talented, motivated young practitioners, and you ask. The thing is that while we have to equip them as much as one can, we should also be conversant that we have, especially in this conversation, we are really talking institutionally. Um, we have a societal vacuum. We have a socio-cultural problem. The state doesn't step in. Within architecture, the professional bodies don't step in at all. The big silence in India is also institutional. Like, I mean, you look at whatever, they're going through their bad times, but you look at Ivy League, you look at any big educational institution in the world, it's actually known for thought leadership, really not so much what it's churning out. And that's the vacuum in India that is really palpable. So in this situation, I would say that if we are looking at a toolkit, we really, while students have to be equipped, we need to look at a toolkit of action research institutionally. And I say action research because there might be a lot of academic research, but we really need to look at how we are engaging on the ground to really change the nature of the soil itself. Like it could be, and whatever your research data, qualitative, quantitative, is going and plugging in with real world scenarios. And I'll again look at it very in a sort of spatial ecosystem wise. Every institution will probably have sites around it, will have engineering bodies, will have PMCs, will have engineering colleges. How do institutionals incrementally in the long term, I'll not even say nation-wise, but maybe in your neighborhood, in your district, in your city, change through engagement and through action research, change the context within which the students are going out? Because eventually what comes down to it, so if I look at myself as a practitioner, we have sites in very remote areas. And apples to apples, I'm just not comfortable sending girls out, even if they are comfortable. And then I have to own my bias and say, go, if you are comfortable, go. And I feel sometimes like my male associates are more confident about sending women out. And I don't know whether they're more confident or they have a blind spot of what all can happen kind of situation. So you second guess it. And you always, even when you take a decision, you don't choose in an empowered manner. You try to equip the person. But you know that if you're going to go to the mountains and you're going to travel alone and something happens, the parent might call you and say, Ki, why did you send my daughter alone? And is that, in the context of our situation, is that a fair question? Is that an unfair question? What you own is that we are dealing with adults, we are dealing with professionals, we have a clear conversation about what the modalities are, and we give them the choice to actually do so. But I think like the onus really on the end, like it's symptomatic then, if you're talking about the students and saying what you can do better, while sort of in terms of professional institutions and also academic institutions, we aren't taking leadership, like thought leadership and action leadership roles very consciously, then we are really operating in a vacuum there. In terms of, my understanding has also been the same, that mostly the girls that you meet are very, young women that you meet are very confident and they are motivated to go out. They do find, there is an inherent bias, but in India, there are so many biases, no? There is like cultural familiarity, gender, age. And to go to Professor Shruti's point, the thing is that they can study all they want. But I remember the first time I went on site, it's like 5 years haven't taught you anything, because the reality of really kicks in. And in that sense, then you wonder whether young women architects are provided the beginner mentality, which might be provided by default to the younger male architects. And they're very nuanced, but like even to build the confidence, you need to have a little, like you can sit with your book, but when you go to site, you need to have a collaborative environment. And I think like some of the thing for us is also done a lot informally. Like, we go to site and you're talking to your PMC and you say, yeah, why don't you hire any woman? Or, where is the toilet? Because sometimes I'll be the only one, but I'll be like, where is the toilet? That kind of situation, when you move it, and I think the needle moves slowly. But for me, the bigger question here, while I totally am on board with equipping the students, is really that can there be one or many or something like some institutional leadership on this to look at the spatiality of gender around this in a more macro format? It will also involve actually proactively communicating with engineering institutions like Catch Them Young, engineering institutions. It will also look at, I think, like for students, it's quite evocative to really talk to women labor, because so many things that we try to protect ourselves from and so much of like the bias we think we feel, for them is really those choices only don't. So there is a certain, like, in a way, an empathy, but also in a way you gain confidence because you realize that I'm talking about intersectionality, that there are women who are actually operating in even more dire challenges. It's not doom and gloom, because that's what I said, that we have this whole jungle mode and then we have a civilizational mode. But given that binary, I don't think like just telling students that be confident and then what? It really made, I mean, I don't want them to go about saying that I'm not confident enough and or I don't know enough and that's where, of course, that is also needed. But we have a bigger macro issue that we have to sort of tackle. So that's it from my end. Sorry, I just sort of, this is like a whole lot of threads of experience
No,
getting out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like we mentioned, like there's a lot of intersections to this. So since Amrita ma'am spoke about the realities of site, and it is not enough to just empower the students, and what about the other side? I would like to take this question next to Nikita, because you are on site, and I think you're also just started couple of years post graduation. So can you share a little bit about the other side?
Hi, hello. So I'm Nikita, and we have Sapa with me here. So both of us have been on a site in Gandhinagar. We've been looking over the execution of a museum project in Koba, which is also kind of not in the middle of a city. It's kind of in the middle of farms. And we've been here keeping checks on a day-to-day basis. So I think we resonated a lot with what Amrita said, because it's like she mentioned, when you're starting young, we are very confident with the things we bring in. And especially when you're volunteering to be on site, you're a lot more confident going deep in. But as and when things happen on site and you start noticing a certain pattern on how you're being treated different to how generally others are being treated, and not because of age, probably, just because of gender, you start losing that confidence a little by little, and you start normalizing it for yourself that this is the way I have to interact on site to be accepted by the group and also to be heard. So it's almost like using your weak points to put forward your points on site and to be accepted, more like being like acting like a female than what you're supposed to be, being confident with the decisions you make. You sort of move back into your comfort of being a female and trying to see if that helps putting your point forward.
Yeah, I think we like when we go out, we've been told, be assertive, put your point across. But when it's not taken the way that you would want to, you would probably have to repeat the same things thrice to have to be taken it seriously, because you've worked on the drawings, it can work. But when the drawings is showing to them कि ये नहीं हो सकता, ये नहीं हो पाएगा, and then they have their own perspective about it, I'm sure with experience they have also some value to add, but it's very easy for you to be brushed off, and something is not possible, and for you to stand your ground and make sure that something is executed as planned, and having to repeat yourself and having to request, or just not like from the perspective that you come from, okay, this is possible, then to have to evaluate everything is just a process from actually making something to being executed. Also, I think um, there are day-to-day snarky comments, or like things like, no, yeah, you've started young, you've had this experience, now you learn to, like, there's this like advice disguised in some snarky comments, now you will be better, the next experience that you have is going to be better because now you know how to deal with the side people.
And yeah, like it's found very easy to negotiate with us, constantly being negotiated for things, and also questioned on authority. And it's it's a lot of pressure on us to make a mistake on site, because as soon as we've made a mistake, it's almost like, I mean, it might seem like an exaggeration, but it's almost like everyone's laughing at you. They're like, yeah, you messed up there. Finally, you messed up, and this is why you are not meant to be here. So when it comes to that, you're parallelly, while thinking about all the instructions you have to give, at the same time, there are points where you're being stern, but there are also workers who give you a look that are sort of threatening. They're almost like, why did you snitch on us? Or why would you say that to our seniors? Which shouldn't come to us, because, it's, I think, especially this site, the clients have hired a lot of female consultancy firms like SJK, their graphics consultants, a lot of females who have been working on this project. So we are respected by them. So automatically others on site find it easier to respect us. But I don't think that's true for other sites. It's just this site where we feel like we're protected, and we have this group of men who are there to listen to any issues that we might have. But I think where we are sitting right now, the toilet doesn't have a closing door. And we've probably put a formal mail asking for like basic facilities like running water constantly, or having to have a door that closes. We have like seepage in our room, and we always sitting on a flooded floor. And having to ask this several times, after a point, we've just let go, and we are kind of dealing with it. We've normalized not asking for a lot of things, stop being demanding. There are these internal things that we keep telling ourselves, let's not. Let's push ourselves. Even if we're tired, we need a day off. We just that doesn't matter. Cramping doesn't matter. You go on site, because if a man was in our place, then they'd get an extra day to look over these things, and we wouldn't. So we've normalized taking these things and just dealing with it the way men would.
Thank you, Nikita and Sama. I would now ask architect Meghna to shed light on her experiences, and maybe also, give us an instance of where you have experienced something like this, and how have you, maybe responded to that.
Okay, thanks, Ramya. Hope I'm audible. It's always good to hear a lot of different opinions, and I think across the board, as Indian women, we have very common experiences. So I would say that we understand when somebody says, that we are sort of, experiences that Amrita and Nikita have shared. There are a lot of commonalities between what we experience day to day. And as a young architect, I think I mean, when I was interning, probably I had good experiences where we were encouraged to go to site and all, because a lot of our work was based on site. And there was also that experience of actually learning from the you can say the lowest common denominator on a site, which is the mason. So you were almost treated like somebody who was an intern to the mason, because you have to start from there. You have to start from learning and trying to understand where they come from. And I think that experience has helped me in the sense that when we study in architecture institutes, there is also a very huge class divide that we don't speak of, because most of the people who are working on site versus people who are studying in architecture, who have graduated from architecture institutes, and more now than maybe 15-20 years ago, are coming from a certain class of society who are, and this is across genders, not just females, even males, who are coming from very privileged backgrounds, who have not really experienced the kind of life that people who are on sites experience. So that divide is also a certain barrier that you may feel. And the exposure of people on site, if that can be started from your formative years, is something which is invaluable, I feel, because then you start understanding their point of view and you start behaving as a team. That is very, very important. That is when I realized that you have to make them understand, make people on site understand, irrespective of gender, that we are part of a team. We are not working in isolation with you, or we are not saying that, okay, you follow our instructions. No, we are always learning from them. We are always wanting their experience. Like, I've also worked in sites in extremely remote areas, sometimes alone. Like when I started working on my own, it was going to all these places where probably, in back in, like, let's say 2010, 2012, when you wouldn't have so many women on site. Also, most of the thekedars, most of the contractors are men, most of the electricians, the plumbers, they are men. You might find some laborers who are women, but how to get through to them, how to get through to them was something that I had to figure out. And to be honest, I did not really think of it as a liability, because I remember there were times when I had to be giving a presentation as to, on site, ki humko kya karna hai, this is how we have to work on it, and there's a whole village of people who are sitting there, and they're trying to listen to what you're saying. But you have to hold your ground, and once you realize that you're talking to them in their language, I think that makes a lot of difference. They quickly understand what you're trying to say. They quickly understand that you know what you're talking about, and you have empathy with them. They will respond to you. So those are some things which I was thrown into because there was no choice. I was not working with somebody who could guide me on it or something. But because of my formative years of experiences working on sites with masons and all, there was that shared understanding of what we are trying to do from their side as well as from my side, because they were also used to people who were architects who were coming and learning from them. So I think that experience sort of helped, and I genuinely feel that as a student of architecture, if I were exposed to more people working on sites rather than just architects and consultants, I would probably be richer for that experience. My advice would be for people to learn the colloquial terms which are used on sites, where, suppose, I mean, even we went to sites in Madhya Pradesh and all in remote tribal areas where we have some common language, but we picked up on the terms that they used. We tried to understand how they construct. So, we sort of become a part of a team. We don't want to work in isolation. I think that is one of the most important things that has helped me over a period of time dealing with people on site, that gain their trust,
coordinator also. I understand.
make sure that they're all part of a team.
But
And I think that is
मला सुप्रियाने खूप instructions दिलेत खाली. हो माहितीये ते QR code
Sorry,
वगैरे मी pay करते.
Dhanashree ma'am,
तुझ्या
can you,
ह्याच्यात नको. मला
Dhanashree
फक्त
ma'am,
एक मिनिट hang कर. मला फक्त दोन गोष्टी पाहिजे.
Dhanashree ma'am, can you
तो
just
मुलगा
mute
कुठून
yourself?
शिकलेला आहे नीरज लिंक्डइन प्रोफाईल वर बघ तो मॅड वर होता
Dhanashree ma'am, can you have your thing mute?
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, no, please go ahead.
yes. So to be honest, after that, I mean, after the initial years, I never really looked back on the fact that maybe there is, I didn't really focus on those aspects, and I focused on the aspects which would make sure that whatever I wanted to convey was getting conveyed. And that has helped me over a period of years. And with a practice where both Pooja and I, who are founders in our firm, are both women, there is a factor, because even we decided to work together because we wanted to work on projects outside Pune, and in different areas in India. And it's always better if the two of us are together instead of just me individually. So yes, there are some issues that we have to always look at when because this is a reality. We are living in India. But I feel that it's sometimes it's good. It's an asset to be a woman, because in a way, you can actually be firm, and people can actually sometimes take you more seriously on sites. That has also been my experience, because we are coming from someone who's different from them, and we are getting sort of introduced to them in a way. So they are also learning to work with us, because many a times even people on sites, they are not used to having women work with them, or being in a position of authority where they are dictating, or they are they are basically dictating the progress of a project, or they are dictating what needs to be done on site. And for them also, I think once you take them into confidence, you realize that we are all a part of the team, they sort of help you along also.
Thank you, Architect Meghna. So, I think I have some questions, as an extension to it, but I think I'll take it probably towards the end, depending on the time. So, now we have heard the different perspectives and experiences from all of you. So I would like to, go back to the point of infrastructure that Nikita and Sama were talking about. So, how do you handle this? Nikita and Sama did say that sometimes you have to just let go of it, and but I would like to hear from maybe architect Amrita or architect Meghna, like how do you handle such things, like when it comes to infrastructure on site? Uh, do you think there is a different way to, maybe we're speaking about making a change or making a, bringing about certain things. So how is there a way that you have tried to tackle these things, or especially if you were the designer and you're working with maybe multiple contractors and you're on site, how have you done that? Or what is your experience and how have you tackled those things? Have you ever had a conversation or a communication regarding this, and something around that?
Okay. Yes. So when we know that we are going to go, when we're going to have to go to sites to work on certain projects, which are maybe slightly in remote areas, and we have, we make sure that it's part of our contract that all of the things that minimum basic things that we require are taken care of. So if we are visiting a site for a couple of days, because if it's a site which is outside the city, and we make sure that we have limited number of site visits, but those site visits are going to be, for 1 or 2 or 3 days, so that everybody is there and we sort out everything on site. So our stay arrangements have to be made. Our all the other provisions. So number one, the site visit timing is decided by us. The convenient dates and all are decided by us. The way we travel is decided by us. And what are the basic requirements that we would like for our accommodation and all are also, part of our contract. So that is very important to have that. And if that is not taken care of, then we would say that, okay, we will take care of our accommodation, we will take care of everything, you reimburse us for all the costs that we have incurred. So that is something that is very much baked into our contract from the beginning. Unless and until the client has agreed to that, we do not go ahead with the project. Or then we say that we will not do a site visit. Then the responsibility of maybe the site tracking and all is somebody else's, maybe the clients or someone. So we work out a system like that. But we are very clear on, these are the basic things that we require when we go to a site visit, and you have to take care of it. And I would say that 95% of the times the clients have taken care of all of these things. We have worked in very small towns and remote areas, and we have been very clear with the clients, and they have responded that way.
Thank you, Architect Meghna. Architect Amrita, would you like to share your perspective on this, please?
I think, yeah, I would agree with, at least my experience coincides with Meghna in a lot of ways on projects from the client end. Also, if there's usually been a fair degree of looking out for, the fact that travel and what do you call it? Accommodation and all of it is really taken care of to a large degree. I think for me, it's more really the ecosystem within which we operate. So, for example, if I'm traveling, once you get to site, for example, if there are no women there, it's most likely there isn't actually a decent toilet there. And it's not just a decent toilet for women. It's a decent toilet for anyone, that means, right? And there Meghna has a point. One of the things that's very important in this is that while we're looking at a practical toolkit, that there's a certain sociology that like, why should even the men not have decent infrastructure on site? Like, while Nikita's, experience is uh, awful, it's also really like, it's not just gendered. It's the site conditions are terrible across board, and we don't have any sort of systems in place to address that. So it's usually like, for me, some of this is really basically like in terms of conversation to tell the clients ki, but and this is a sort of, because also with architecture, you're mostly feeling quite inadequate to deal with the stuff that is already there to get a building up. This becomes one of those things ki, how many battlegrounds do you open out? But there's a larger infrastructure. So I'm traveling, say, in Orissa and Chhattisgarh, I'm traveling late, and my clients are a bit like, okay, don't travel after sundown. But for me, then it becomes a thing that as a woman, then I have to factor in whether I'm going to spend more man days away from office to try and figure out, that I'm in traveling around in daylight. Vis-a-vis, like if there were men traveling to site, they would have just done it after sundown also. And so I feel like that's what, that there needs to be a balance of this, because what we encounter in the gendered perspective, we to still encounter in a privileged perspective. If I'm traveling late, I will have a taxi and a driver. The client will provide me that. But, I'm traveling in an ecosystem where most women then need to be indoors. So I think like for me, sort of, these conversations are also um, quite valuable if they translate into some sort of actionized thing. Um, like gender issues in India are, I mean, almost all issues are very spatial, but like they really play out spatially. The lack of a toilet, the lack of a door that shuts is a spatial aspect. And I really feel like institutions need to embrace this in terms of pushing the needle a little bit. Infrastructure on site, like you might find a hotel nearby, and infrastructure on site is almost always lacking. And that is because, to start with, labor is not considered deserving of decent infrastructure. So, which is why I also feel like, I'll just go back to the thing that like we are, which Meghna also beautifully touched upon, is that we are part of a community. And then I think there needs to be more conversation between architectural institutions and things with, say, engineering institutions, with people working on labor issues. And also, what do we look at site, like there are artisans, these people are experts in their own domain. And I'm really like, after 2 decades in the field, I still don't know enough about what a mason does and what an electrician does. I'm dependent on their expertise and goodwill. And I feel like while people go on site, when I was studying and working in Scandinavia, the whole design build ethos and DIY ethos was actually quite. I saw my architect friends had a different kind of skill set, because they could, well, they mostly work with wood, but they could build with wood. And in their pedagogy, in the first year, I remember in the university I was, in the first year, there was a design submission for something in the town that might be needed as a social impact thing, like a small thing. And one design would be selected. And the second semester, the whole group of first year students would build it. So can you imagine that in the same town that you're going to study for 5 years, at the end of first year of architecture, even if it's a small playground thing that children are using, you have the confidence to actually build something. And we have a tilt in our pedagogy, which is partly what we've inherited from a certain educational system that was transplanted, and partly because of our own class hierarchies, is that architecture is considered a very cerebral uh, profession, whereas has a lot to do with hands, and the people who work with hands on site are considered somewhere low on the hierarchy. And if we break that, you get a lot of mentorship on site, because like Meghna said, you work with the mason, and while we say that on site there will be people dismissing your expertise, if you give respect to people who are in a way not, in a way, they've experienced what you have, they don't get the adequate respect, then there are so many people who are more than happy to mentor you. So I think blind spots in terms of when you go to site, while you know your victimhood, what is the kind of privilege you carry, is very important. So, like the toolkit needs to have a certain degree of practical sociology as much as, like literal hacks as to, like, wherever you find a toilet, use it. It's, I mean, like my gynecologist said, India has the highest incidence of UTI. We do not have toilets. And forget site. Like, why aren't architects talking about that? It's so this thing. So I mean, there is that yin and yang of both the macro and micro. And some of it is battles won, and some of it is battles really ignored. I think that is something one just takes par on course in this profession. Ki, iska bandwidth nahi hai. You don't agree with it. Things are not happening, okay, but you just move with it and you hope next time you can push it slightly more.
Amrita, ma'am, just another question to follow up with that. So how do you think that, let's say that, this is the conversation, this is the, maybe a starting point for many such conversations, and even in, things that can happen, tangible things that can happen. So how do you think, an institution and a firm, for example, let's say that we're trying to push that, boundary and trying to make a point or trying to bring some sort of, how do you think as a step one, an institution and a firm could collaborate on certain things? Since we're speaking about site visits and infrastructure on site and everything, is there a first step that one could take to start with some kind of change? In your opinion, what could that be?
I think it will differ from firm to firm, Ramya. I think it depends on how much bandwidth the firm has to engage with things in a sustained manner. The capacity to build a certain framework in which inputs are actually taken, leveraged, tested, and expanded really lies with the institution from my perspective, because I'm not in an institution. I'm sure institutions have their own things, but I feel like firms will have limited sort of bandwidth to sort of drive a lot of this thing. What they can do in case that there's a good research design is that what they can really offer is experience, like tested experience. What they can also offer is that if you have a hypothesis, which is not very high stakes, they can, in a more incubated setup, test it out in a more real world scenario. But because the thing is that unless there's an incremental design and there is a certain sort of way to qualitatively and quantitatively assess like what has been done, it can really sort of dissipate. So I feel like the first thing is to maybe do a framework and then see whether one firm or many firms can plug in a strategic manner with their inputs and experience, and also maybe like a practical playground within a more sort of a curated zone. I mean, I can speak for myself and a lot of my peers is that a lot of this is like things that one takes out time for, which is not necessarily available. But there are firms, again, there are different kinds of firms that are actually maybe very focused onto, which is a great thing that has happened in recent years, is that they're not necessarily just also concerned with building but I would say that especially with this topic, the fact that people are actually engaging on the ground and building buildings, it becomes an important takeaway. Otherwise, it becomes a scenario. And I would also say that take into confidence project management firms, take into confidence engineering firms, take into confidence labor organizations. There are no firms, unfortunately, but like labor organizations and what their take is. And I would say, like, in a way, push towards a certain thought leadership scenario, because there is even a 5-degree tilt in conversation might have much more impact than like a really curated. I mean, that's a problem with our profession, is that we objectify everything. So you'll have this one excellent case study or something, and then blah blah blah, but it doesn't really change the overall scheme of things. One last thing I would say is that also look at this very spatially. So if you are like my college is an ITO, so then I would say that, like where I studied in School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi is part of a certain area in the city. And if not, it is in the city. And I think it's very important to say that what can we do in our neighborhood and our backyard, because you can engage with it more constantly and be really like, okay, at least in 2 years or 5 years of this research project, this shifted. And each backyard has its own leverage. So, for example, in Delhi, because it's Delhi, you might have more access to, say, like headquarters of bigger bodies or access to policymakers. That is your privilege. You'll not have it in a smaller town. So, a good research design should also look at an action research, what kind of sort of latent assets you have to make sure that whatever you are working on has a qualitative impact, qualitative and quantitative impact in real terms. I don't know if I answered your question. And I think the last bit of it is that it will come out of a few conversations. Maybe the first step is a conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Architect Amrita. So now I'm taking this to the faculty here. The next one will be to them. So we've heard about what the...
I don't know.
Professor Siddhi, yes, thank you. So we have heard now from the experiences of architects here, how they look at infrastructure, then safety and things like that. So how do, now there's another aspect to this as well when it comes to, there are certain things when it comes to parents, because they are also aware of all these things. Sometimes there is this, they might have to be on site at night, maybe they have to travel, they might have to be available maybe at odd hours or something. There's also this long hour culture that architecture has, not just architecture in general. I think a lot of companies, especially in India, have this. So do you think that all these are limiting, or we are losing female talents here? So architect Meghna, architect Amrita has also mentioned how to navigate, and like from their perspective, they've mentioned certain things. But how do you think it's not a linear thing, right? Like people might react to it differently, students might react to it differently. So do you have you had such instances where there were parents involved, and the confidence that they have, and because of which that the students were not able to tackle certain things? One of you can go, Professor Vishal, Shruti, or Professor Mahesh.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I go ahead on this? So maybe because I think,
Yeah, sure.
is it okay? Vishalji,
Yeah,
do you
sure,
want to go ahead,
sure.
or should I just
No, you can
a
go
little
ahead.
bit on this actually? Because I'm going to contradict Ramya on this. I personally feel that of late, students have become the sense of belief, I would say, is risen, or it's more amongst the current generation. So, like Meghna mentioned about, they don't make a site visit if certain things are not sorted, or like Amrita mentioned about simple toilets. Not if there are no toilets on the site. But I think the current Gen Z architects, young architects, have started working towards sorting their, what do you say? They start finding their way around things. So we recently had this settlement study visit, and we went to a village, and we already knew that we will not have toilets accessible through the day while the students are documenting. And I visit the same street where my students were documenting, and an hour later, I didn't see them around. And I was walking by the street, I saw a big house. So these students, through their conversation skills, made friendship with the owner of the house. The lady welcomed them inside, handed them a sharbat, and allowed them to use the washroom. So the generation has started making sure that they find their way for what they really want to do. One. And two, what happens on big sites these days is there is this sense of inclusion that I have seen with renowned builders, where they first sought the labor camps and then they sought the site office with an attached toilet necessarily. Recently, on the one of the juries of a very well-known awards that I was a part of, we went to a metro station site, and I was very pleased to see there was a gents toilet, a ladies toilet, and a gender neutral toilet also on site. So that sort of awareness has started kicking in, of course. But of all the conversations that we had so far, I just wanted to make a point that maybe we shouldn't all look at it from a pessimist, pardon me for the word, but very pessimist perspective. Maybe we are looking only at the downside of things far more these days. We should try and look at it also from the positives that are happening and highlight those as case studies at various sites and in various practices. Maybe I'm sure I'm aware about Meghna's practice, and that's why I will put this across. Meghna and Pooja make sure that their interns who visit sites, before they are visited, the site is given a set of instruction already how the interns are to be treated at their site. So there is this sense of communication that is already established, and I think good communications and good sort of guidance to the site owners or the site contractors, construction workers, laborers, the sanitary warriors, whoever are involved in the process of getting a project executed, these guys need to be oriented in a manner such that suddenly this whole bias towards gender or this insecurity for one particular gender is this boundaries blurred off, and more confidence, like we started with this talk, that once the posture and the confidence starts increasing on site, we will have a different way of site executions. Maybe we'll have faster project executions. Maybe we will have better project deliveries. Maybe we'll start getting more projects entirely executed by architects, female architects here, I would specifically mention. But having said that, sorry, am I audible, right? Yeah. Having said that, what Amrita also mentioned about less number of PMCs in the PMC for women in the sector of construction. I have noticed a few good project management consultants are women. They are driving the change. They are trying to set up ISO standards on sites, and they are going to do this over and over the years in times to come. And I think Meghna had lost connection. I'll make that point again. Meghna's SOP to their site is very interesting, even before their intern visits. I think more PMCs, women becoming PMCs, will change the scenario of the construction world. Thank you. Those are my points.
Yeah, Professor Vishal. Thank you, Professor Mahesh.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I would kind of like I have kind of mixed opinion on this. Like I would agree with Professor Mahesh to some extent. Then I would also agree to points raised by Amrita and Meghna. Like in my opinion, like as Professor Mahesh said, like. Like you mentioned, Ramya, that architecture has a tradition of long working hours and late night working hours and all that. So in my experience, like parents, like students working at home, parents in long run, over a couple of years, they adjust. Okay, my child is working at home, so the work is demanding in that way, so they somehow adjust to that. But when it comes to going to site, so I would talk about my experience, that as a faculty, I often feel scared sending students to site, thinking about the things that I don't know what would be the conditions. Like one of my student was studying, doing a study in slums. So I maintained very good communication with her when she was going to site. I maintain that communication. Okay, you are going, okay, please take care of this, please don't go into these areas. So these notions are, they keep coming back to me as a faculty, that okay, I don't know if that would be safe for her to go to that site or not, that place. One of our student is studying something related to transportation. Okay, so she needed some data related to travel, and she needed some toll data. So she asked me, sir, can I stand there at near the toll and do this kind of survey? So I don't know about parents, but I also get scared sometimes. I told her, no, it's not safe for you to stand there and look at these vehicles. All kind of people will be walking there. And so these public spaces, I like Amrita said, you often have this fear. These spaces are yet not, I would say, gender neutral, or I would say safe from that perspective. I don't know much about parents, but as a faculty, I often feel scared that yes, it would be a challenge. I certainly can say that there is a difference that I feel when I ask my student as a girl, when she's visiting these sites, then I often ask them to take care. And because there are these these things which exist in our mind. Okay, I don't know what will happen on that side, it's not safe, there won't be any toilets, like everybody has talked about this. So these kind of things are there. And yes, we have had like coming back to the point which Professor Mahesh said, that today's generation often, yes, there is this thing that the confidence level has risen, and often students have they want to go to site, they want to do the work, and things are improving, that conversation is happening now. But I would say it's a mixed kind of thing. As a faculty, I really get scared when I have to send my students to the, and like what ma'am said initially, there's a difference in sending students to site in groups and a student visiting the site individually. There's a vast amount of difference in that. As a group, they are more confident, they know that we'll be able to handle things even if they go wrong. But as an individual, it becomes, the sites are not perceived as safe public spaces to visit. And by safety, it's all kind of safety, in the safety at the level of infrastructure also, like toilets. And when you talk to some people, they don't take you seriously, like what Nikita said. So students keep when they come back and tell us these things, I agree that there are these issues which are there on site. There's one more point that I want to make here. As what Amrita said, that as practices, as firms, there's a lot of experience that can be brought into this conversation. As institutions, I would say, like, it is very important for engineering institutions, I would say, an academic institution where there are more number of boys, to have these kind of conversations. Like, we are a women's institution, we often have these dialogues, these conversations about these issues which are there, which women have to face on sites. But at the end of the day, women are the ones who are facing this on site, and men have to understand that these issues should not happen on site. So who will sensitize those men? Often these discussions are happening in women institutions, which are already, women are already facing these issues. And we are leaving aside men or boys, like you mentioned, catching them young. So why are we not focusing on having these conversations more often for boys who are studying in academic institutions, and catching them young there? Like, for example, I tell you, there are some courses like universal human values. I think it is in NPTEL or AICT UGC, some course which is there, universal human values. Similarly, we at our institutions have been having these discussions for long. And small things make a lot of difference. So we had these discussions, and we designed two courses specially focused on these issues. One is called as Women and Habitat, and another is called as Women and Sustainable Development. So one is at a PG level and another is at UG level. So in those courses, we try to address, or I would say sensitize, or about about these issues which are issues being faced by women across society at different levels. It is at, you can say, qualitative issues also, like in conversations, like what Nikita said, what they are saying on the site is often dismissed. So things like those, and small things, like even like when you're designing a pedestrian facility, a walkway, what should be the height? Typically in a residence, in a residence, kitchen are seen as spaces which are belonging, where only women will be working. So these kind of notions are so much there in our mind that they become, these biases start emerging from these standards, these norms, these things which we are see across in the build. So we have designed these two courses which talk about these issues. But then my point here is that why not teach these kind of courses in institutions where you, like typical in civil engineering departments of engineering institutions, where these issues are more talked about, and men should be sensitive towards these issues. Women are already facing these issues. So that is what I want to say about this.
Yeah.
I think I would like to add over here one thing. It's you talked about the parents and their level of confidence. When I do remember, initially there would be parents when taking admission, because even ours is an all women's institution, preferring architecture over civil engineering, because this is more kind of where you have flexible times, you can be in offices, you need not go on site. These were some of the initial aspects when thinking about architecture. I think we cannot overlook these aspects at its core. Yes, the society is changing, the women are becoming more confident, the girls want to go on sites, but still the parent side is there. And as sir said, that if they are going at some areas where we kind of try to warn them for safety issues, they are going to be there. And what's important is that women somehow know how to normalize things, and find their way out. So through all these, they would definitely find their way out. But as sir said, it's very essential that we have a common dialogue between architecture students, engineering students, maybe NGOs, maybe community workers also, as well as with project management institutions, where you have these multidisciplinary exposure at the college level itself, then it becomes easy. So yes, as a women's institution, it's essential that we have these multidisciplinary exposure with co-ed education institutions, so that they are, and not remain in isolation. Because if you talk your problems only with the ladies, it will never work. You do need to have a co-ed or the other gender equally participating into it, and understanding the so there are at times blurred lines, there are sometimes very strong lines between these different disciplines, but they need to be understood by I would say each of them, whether it is an architect, whether it is an project manager. Each one of these need to be understanding the other side of the professional expertise that is there. And so if they are kind of exposed to these thoughts, maybe interaction at the school level, not just in terms of other architectural co-ed schools, but in terms of other interdisciplinary associated disciplines also, it would definitely work a lot. And I think at this particular point, it is essential that you, especially like Amruta and others, we would like to invite you all, especially the colleges, that you do share your experiences with the students, because the focus many times still is more on aesthetics, design concepts, and that focus from that to, let's say, execution, technical execution, needs to be more brought about, and this is what could help that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shruti. Does anybody have any take on this, or we'll move to the next part?
Ramya, if I might just add,
Yes.
when we are talking about women finding our own ways to deal with things on site, and definitely I think that's some skill that's to be appreciated. We also feel like there's a need to, while this discussion about interdisciplinary discussions is being taken on, we should also focus on having women not normalize things for themselves. We should not be letting them, we shouldn't be focusing on, okay, they'll figure it out. It's something that we are asking them to normalize. We are supportive, but asking them to normalize things and to figure out your own way is basically asking them to deal with all the societal issues that are already existing. Though I know it's something that has to be learned over time, but it's ideal to not let students know what the issues are in detail, because nobody really walks into a space and would like to know all the things that could go wrong. But in general, how you should be confident in what you do, and you should take your stand. You shouldn't have to find a way around it, and you should fight for what's right and the right way to do things. So I think that way of training women is also necessary, that they have to be taught not to normalize things at all for themselves. That's quite important, is what we thought would work. Yeah.
I would also have one more point to add. I think Professor Rai has a very, very important point, and I completely agree with him, because this kind of a conversation would never happen in a college that I studied in, which was co-ed. And even in co-ed colleges nowadays, more and more women are opting for the course. So it's more important that these conversations are had there, and to understand that women have certain requirements which have to be catered to, and so do men. I mean, it's not like that because we have special requirements, that is why we are doing something. Late hours in college translate to late hours in professional working is also not correct, not for women, neither is it for men. We have to find that work life balance, and try to understand that this is something that happens in academia, but it should not translate to your profession, neither for men nor for women. Women automatically don't do that because they have probably more responsibility at home, or they choose to have more responsibility at home at times. But that doesn't mean that nobody else should be given that opportunity to make that choice. So that is very, very important, I feel. So even in office, we follow a very strict timing, whether it is a male colleague or a female colleague. Everybody leaves the office at 7 o'clock. Nobody waits before that. And these things are, I mean, I think we need to bake it in our profession.
Thank you, Architect Meghna. Architect Amrita, do you have anything?
No, I'm in agreement with what Meghna is saying, and it's again one of those things that what are the choices that are available to professionals across the spectrum? Are they empowered choices? You want to stay late? Can you? You don't want to? Can you? It's about like, how are you being empowered to actually have be in a position where you can give the best to the profession and also take the best out of it. And I think eventually is that, like, and why I'm stressing again and again on action research is that part of whatever initiative this takes on will have to be that those interactions with, say, engineering colleges, those interactions with co-ed colleges will have to be initiated. That will have to be part of the research design, not that it should happen, whereas you make it happen, because that's part of the action of the research. You realize that there needs to be stakeholder engagements, which are the stakeholders, and you do those stakeholder engagements. We also have to look at different pedagogical models, because a lot of this, plays out in India. Like Professor Mahesh had an interesting point of view that in more formalized sectors, where companies are now also, they have global ambitions and all, ISO standards, things are being implemented. But India also exists in a sort of like, sometimes actually is part of our resilience, this like crazy, chaotic, inspiring, frustrating informality. And wahan pe there is a lot of it plays out in informal scenarios. Like, so for example, when Nikita and Sana, is it? Sorry.
Sama.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get that again.
Sama, S-A-M-A.
Sama. Yeah. So Sama shared is that, how do you relate, especially as a young professional, as a woman on site? I remember, like, anecdotally, I'd gone to some site like near Barmer, and, I had a really supportive PMC that time, one of my earlier projects, and we had gone out for lunch. And, the way it happens in small towns is that they had this restaurant, and then they had this one room where you could actually have beer. Like, and that was all full of men. And because I have, like, in the studio, one of the founding partners is Suditya. And I remember the PMC guy saying, Suditya sir nahi aaye, varna hum jaake beer pee sakte the. And I was like, there's a certain bonding that happens that is not available. And I drink beer, but my point is, the PMC, however good he is, that if his daughter went and had beer with, the thing is that his value system would have judged it. So you can't bond. The other is that how do you actually exert authority on site? Our sites have, like, and this is like North India, no? तो मतलब गालियों की तो बौछार हो सकती है. You can't do it. As a woman, you cannot do it. The other is, you will not also receive it. Like, it'll be like, Madam ko ye keh diya. So they're also like, they feel that our gender can also be weaponized against them, no? Because what would be a normal aggressive interaction on site, will someone be like, unhone ladies ko aise bol diya, kind of situation. So sometimes some of these pedagogies also, like, one of the interesting things that we had done, I don't know whether it was initiated by the faculty or when I was in college, is we had this subject called professional practice. And we actually did a role-playing scenario. It wasn't on gender, but it was about architects going to site. So we actually used, I think it was basically because we hadn't prepared for our submission, and I realized now that my entire group was also doing theater. So we did a role-playing thing where someone pretended to be the engineer, someone the client, someone the scenario. And I think the pedagogical models not necessarily be just, like, theory and talking about it. Sometimes, like, looking at alternative sort of workshop modules, like looking at theater as one aspect, and also the act of building together. Like, those kind of things will probably have a more palpable impact than what we use to teach other subjects. So a lot of it will really depend, I think, the intention aside. And frankly, I do put a lot of store in good intentions because it leads to something. But I feel like in a lot of social impact aspects, wo good intention becomes so rare that when we stop there, we really need to have a good research design to see how this really, like, one can leverage whatever time and resources one puts to the, like, most amount of impact it can have. Otherwise, I think in a lot of cases in India, like, if you unpack things, there are amazing laws and policies, and everything is actually strangely in place. It's almost shocking because you see the ground reality and you think kuch bhi nahi hai. The gap is almost always in how it translates into a practical setting. So if ethos is sort of like centering this, then I would really say that the design of this really needs to be sharpened as much as it can.
Thank you, Architect Amrita. So this actually leads us to the next question. Yes, we have understood the multiple perceptions on this, and like Architect Amrita mentioned, that it is not just one-sided. Looking at it from only the women's point of view, or just building their capacity alone. But if we are to take a step towards it, what can that be? How could we do it? So a couple of points I have here is, let's say, a job interview, an internship, when these students are going for this, and even, working on site, we have understood certain challenges from Sama, Nikita, and even the experiences from, Meghna, and also about the kind of treatments they have, good and bad. So we have also spoken about choices, like Amrita ma'am mentioned, choices, the decisions, the freedom to make those decisions, be it like, staying late in the office, in the site, whatever. So how can we prepare? So, how can we prepare these students now, since we have had a certain amount of conversation around it? I think, it could even be how you were mentioning, if there could, even if it is in collaboration with some co-ed colleges or something like that, where we take it up a notch and not just talk in silos just with the architecture students. What can the next steps be when we are speaking about a toolkit, a capacity building initiative? What can that be? And this question is to all of you, like the faculty and architects, to all of you. So if you are to make this toolkit with 2 or 3 different initiatives, role play, like Amrita ma'am mentioned, would be a good thing. So where if you are able to give us certain learning experiences from site, and that could turn into a role play, that would be great. So what can that be is my next question, and this will be the last question for us today. So it's open to all of you, so you can take it up one by one, or I can even just go in the order I see. Like I see Architect Meghna first, so if you want to take this question first.
Okay, yes. So when it comes to maybe let's start with when you're in college as a student. I would like it like even I did not have that exposure when I was in a student in college, but it would be great if I was exposed more to people who are actually working on site, how they work, instead of just going visiting with an architect and civil engineer, as important as it is. It will be great if they can also get an exposure to how contractors work, how their how the electricians on site work, the plumbers on site work, the masons on site work, and to understand and empathize with their issues. And whether they actually understand how to read drawings or not, or whether they are the communication from the contractor is coming to them or not. That is something which is, I feel, which will help a lot for the students to actually understand where your whatever you've thought of as that larger picture actually goes down to. Who is the final person who's actually going to be building that for you, and what whether they understand. I think last year Ethos had also done one workshop with contractors and carpenters and people on site. Similarly, if that kind of exposure was given to the students as well, as to how the site works, in terms of not just how an architect communicates, but also how people who are actually building your project feel about your involvement, about getting information from you that is required to build. That is number one. That will equip you with at least understanding what goes on site to begin with. Secondly, when it comes to internships, as a part of your internship, we are never, I mean, from whatever interns we have in office, when we receive the say a guidelines of what their internship entails, they do mention site visits, but not actually what you need to observe when you go to a site visit. So probably, if because at that stage interns are not really, not so many, maybe some are, but not so many interns are sent alone. They are going together. They are going with the senior architects in office. They need to have a checklist of what they really need to observe on site, not just as a part of office work, which we do tend to tell them what they have to record or not, but also as a part of their academic work. So if they want to have certain interviews with people on site or something, that will again help people understanding how people work on site. And thirdly, I think that these kind of experiences will help, because finally each one of us figures out our own way of how to deal with issues during site work, and how best we want to include it as a part of our practice, or we figure out our own systems. So you have to equip students, whether women or men, to basically figure out an efficient system for them, and empathizing with people who are actually working on site is step one for that. And these, I think, will actually help for them to understand, and to enable them to figure out how they would like to work out a certain system. But the bare bones for that can be taken up right from, say, first year, second year, and onwards into their internship period.
Thank you, Architect Meghna. Professor Shruti Joshi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, as Meghna said, technical intimidation should be reduced, and we need to definitely integrate more hands-on site literacy, if possible, through a curriculum, or at least wherever it's possible, we need to introduce that. Another thing that could come handy is if the students are actually able to build a prototype or construct there in maybe the college backyards, construction yards that they have. If they are at least let at half the scale, the actual scale, even if they are able to build and what all goes into that, it will familiarize them with the material, with the techniques that are there, and of course, then going on the site. So I think it's very much essential that mentoring out over year happens either through their peer groups, the senior students who have passed out, and they're working. So bringing them back to the college for sharing their experiences. Many practicing women who are already there and handling the sites. So this mentorship is something that would be of great help, and that is done right in the college level. This, and many times it's better to have a design versus reality check that we, make them aware of. And if they are kind of guided towards it, it would definitely make a better architect right at the college level, I think.
Thank you, Professor Shruti. Architect Amrita, would you like to go next?
Sorry. Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is what is being done already. I feel like when we went into internship, we were thrown into the deep end. That has its own value in some ways, I would say. But it's good to have the space for the conversation, at least to acknowledge the elephant in the room. And I think it's good to have a orientation before um, young practitioners step into professional through internship or even as full-time professions, to really talk about these issues, to air. Maybe they have these fears, like just to have the space, like a safe space to get it out. And I think there can also be a certain upskilling in terms of actually just the soft skills of professional life, and just how do you present yourself as a professional. And I would say this is also across board, but women suffer from it slightly more, especially in our societal construct, is that there is in our education a sense of infantilizing. So there are times I have to tell interns that, like, kindly do not reduce me into a school teacher, because these are 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. There is such an infantilization that, you know, you have 22-year-old people who can vote, like maybe have kids, all of it, but they'll just be like, tell us what to do. And then women end up, like, because of the inherent dynamic, suffering from it more. So I think soft skills in terms of professional communication, in terms of how you present yourself, as well as a general airing of like what is, especially, and to mention gender, because, you know, the thing is that people want to generalize it, and there is always this thing. So if they air it, that is as much that, you know, they are slightly better prepared when they go in. I think, like, definitely also looking at different pedagogical models of where. So for one of the things that has come up is, you know, doing design build, and that can be, there are different ways to do it. Like, either you build something which is essentially just the act of building. It's always good for students to build something that is useful, whether it's in their campus or go to some location where what they are doing has some sort of value impact that gives them a whole lot of confidence and a certain sense of purpose. There is also, you know, looking at, for example, theater based things in terms of, you know, how like you know, like body work, role playing, all of that. The third thing that has come out is also, how do you actually do stakeholder engagement institutionally, whether it's sort of engineering colleges, PMC firms, other practices, etc. And for me, it's also, I think, like, we have a lot of interns over the years who've come and gone. I think institutions very rarely actually locate this in any kind of conceptual or academic framework. It's very rare that any institution has reached out and said that, you know, this cohort of interns has had these experiences. We are just going to have a Zoom call. Any representative from your studios can come in, and we can give a feedback as to what has worked, not individually, but over the cohort of the batch, what has worked, what has not worked. So what is a feedback loop to practices from institutions that can better equip practices also to learn from more of a collective experience than you. So I think basically there's also from this a sense of like, what can come out of it. Like, I would say, even if it's a toolkit, it would be good to have it as an open source situation. The last thing I would like to say from the institution as well as the student, like, it will be good to frame this as a larger thing. I feel like institutions more, I mean, every time we've spoken, it's said that, like, while we equip the students, we should normalize this as this is your base, and now go deal with it the best you can. Institutions, especially the ones for women's institutions, I feel like it's almost like a calling to say that how can you actually develop a more larger long-term research thing that helps action research things that really takes on a certain leadership role in changing mindsets and perceptions. This is more of a long-term thing, but I really feel that it should be located within that. And I think for the students also, eventually, while a lot of this emerges from survival issues in some senses, because, while we don't want to be pessimistic, we are all talking about it because it's a problem thing. But again, we should problematize this. I think it's very important to actually say that we are not really equipping them for survival as much as we are encouraging them to be leaders, because again, to take Meghna's point, like, most architecture students come from relatively privileged backgrounds, given the psychotic inequality in our society. There is one part where, if you're looking at it in terms of victimhood, that there is a certain bitterness of experience and there's a certain hardening. If it's just survival based, because you see all the problems that you deal with and the unfairness of things. But then there is, if you're basically framing this within leadership, then it in a way builds empathy, because the first thing you start looking at is that, okay, I'm going through this and there's a whole lot of people going through worse. And so how does this sort of, so if that sort of vision expands, then there is a greater impact of empowering even one student, because then they go on to sort of like create more room on the table for other people. So it really needs to be, it has to be framed as something beyond survival skills, because that would be very reductive. So yeah, these were the few points.
Thank you, Professor Amrita. Sorry, Architect Amrita. Professor Vishal, do you want to go next?
Yes, yeah. So, what I want to say here is from the academia perspective, that I believe that there is a granularity to the issue. Like there are larger issues and things that have to be done, and then what do we do at the smallest level, at the basic level. So it's a kind of, what happens in academic system is that it becomes a kind of a race. Like there's a semester, at the end of the semester you have to produce these many drawings, model, and all that, you have to score. There's, you got 8.5 CGPA, I should have 9, you should have 9.5, and that race is going on, and there is a time constraint. Otherwise, how I see this is is like the smallest things that you do in your studio or in your academic work, any assignment. Like for example, site analysis, that is the first thing in the beginning that you do when you're doing your design and all that. At that very stage we should do. So in site analysis we ask them, okay, what was वहाँ पे soil कैसा था, वहाँ पे context क्या है, and all those things we ask. We never ask about the gender issues on site. We ask, was there any toilet, was the site safe as women when you visited the site, what was your experience. It never gets factored into the aspect of site analysis. It never gets when we do case studies, as students, when they do case studies, so we ask them, okay, how much was the area, how many rooms were there and whatnot, all floor plans and all that things are asked. We never ask about this issue of about the gendered spaces, the issue of gendered spaces. So that never gets factored into this case study aspect. And these things are, then comes the design. So when you are designing, we need to spell these things out in the curriculum, that what is the final outcome. So there is an output of design exercise and there is an outcome for design exercise. So do we factor this into that outcome, that these spaces have to take care of the needs of males, females, and transgenders as well. This never gets factored into the outcome of design. So, and then it becomes a race against times. We have a 3 or 4 months of semester, and then you have to complete your design. So how many aspects can you cover? So these are the basic minimum things that you have to finish, and then you do it. So we need to relook at the pedagogy of architecture. We need to relook at the curriculums that we are designing. Are we factoring in these things into our curriculum? Are they getting converted into, when the students are preparing design drawings, are these things coming into their designs objectively? Then coming to the site visits, okay, we need to we have a lot of site visits embedded in our curriculums. So for construction, in design also, for case studies also, students go. But at the end of the day, when they come back, we this conversation about the gendered spaces, this doesn't figure into that, those juries that we have for our site analysis and case studies and all that. So I think we need to spell these things. It's high time we should spell these things out into our curriculums, into our design problems, into our construction problems, that you need to touch upon these things. And this goes for both male, for female, any student. Every student should highlight these points, and I think we should be prepared to devote more time to such things in our studios, in our classes, because at the end of the day, we have these 3 months, 4 months semester. We have to complete this much of work, these many drawings, all that model and everything. So we are often, strike a balance with what is basic minimum requirement for everybody. So it's done. So that is what I was mentioning earlier. Also, we tried to work upon this, and we have come out with two subjects, two courses, which are about women and habitat and women and sustainable development, which talks about these issues only. But I still feel we keep on having these discussions in our department about these things, that how do we, being a women institution, again I would come back to the same point, that being a women institution, we are doing it, we are trying to do these things at our institution, but then again those time limitations, those things are there. And I think that it is these kind of curriculums, these kind of courses, when they get developed, I think it is equally important that the boys institution, the co-ed institutions, the male, they should also undergo these courses. They should, when a boy, a male is studying a site, is doing a site analysis, then he should also present a women's, what was his analysis about the site when it comes to the aspect of requirements or the needs of women on site. So the boy should be expected to do this when they are doing the site analysis. So this needs to be very categorically written down in the design briefs, in the curriculums. I think then this conversation would begin to come to surface, and then I think it would be it can act as a toolkit, as you mentioned earlier, for everybody to follow.
Thank you, Professor Vishal. Now, Nikita and Sama, would you like to share your thoughts on this? I think we have lost them. Nikita and Sama. Yeah. I think in the meantime, Professor Mahesh, if you would like to go.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it short. Thank you.
Yes.
I think because we are winding this up, I made some notes. I just want to read out what I thought was academically more concerning. The entire idea of delivering a toolkit could be through maybe four aspects. What I thought was what Vishal sir mentioned about doing this at all architecture schools and not just schools with women. A semester long course on maybe a module per week or 2 sessions per week with specific assignments and mentoring related to the subject. With practitioners and with maybe through ethos, we could do an intensive workshop series over the weekends with all the students. Maybe we take them on sites. Third, I thought, why are we singling out this topic of gendered spaces differently? Why can't we integrate modules in history? So we look at history and gender. We look at we maybe look at professional practice and gender. We may be looking at design studios incorporating design briefs that had gender specifically addressed. So that instead of saying that we are doing something special, why can't it become a way of learning itself by academia? And the fourth thing academics could do is create online resource repositories to educate the masses. The last man on site and the most educated person on site both should know about these minimums and the can't do withouts and can do withouts on sites. In terms of creating a toolkit that you spoke about, some toolkit components that come to my mind is also we don't have enough published materials, infographic material about the do's and the don'ts. In the public domain, we realize that people's cognitive memory of grasping things is more visual than textual. So our idea should, as ethos or as practitioners or as academic institutes, we should create flyers, facilitator guides. We could have workbooks for students to understand gender and spaces. We could create video games if these kids are more interested to understand it. We could have small snippets, video case studies recorded by Meghna, Amrita, Nikita, Sama, anybody who is ready to contribute towards creating some video tutorials or modules of telling basic etiquettes on that. We have so many influencers on Instagram talking about how to dress up, how to eat rice, how to do peel a banana. Why can't we have videos being made that educate masses on how should gender be looked at? How should spaces become secured? Also, the last point was institutional policies. I think what Vishal sir also mentioned, we shouldn't really have a policy for gender for women colleges only. We should have gender policies for co-ed institutions where the male counterparts are also taught how do you deal with the women on site, the women in the construction built environment profession as well. So these were the essential components of the toolkit that I feel would add a great value. While we were all talking, I was trying to take notes, and I've sort of prepared a 20-page long document, which I would love to share with everyone later. I've just picked up some points that all of you were talking about, and I've created a white paper. Maybe this is my last point here I wanted to make was if Ethos could publish a white paper on this and reach out to all institutions and offices through maybe Council of Architecture or something, maybe we are all weave them together and make this a comprehensive document that comes out as a recommended reader or ready reckoner for people to understand the role of both the genders or maybe all the genders in the built environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh. And Nikita and Sama.
Hi, Ramya. Sorry, we
Yeah.
had some internet issues.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think everybody's contribution to the toolkit that we should produce at the end of it was really helpful. Nikita and I have almost spent around 400 days at site now, and something that has been really helpful is having great mentors. So all four of our partners and their contribution as women and their experience throughout this 30-year span of career that they had has really been helpful for us, what kind of boundaries, how much, where to sternly say no, what kind of things are to be expected from the people around us was really important. Other than that, so I think Professor Shruti at some point had mentioned this. So having architectural professional people come into these colleges and speak about their experience will really empower all these young architects. And other than that, I think just giving them hacks that would be helpful, just making these points sort of like, that you can have allies at site too. You can have people that are really on your team, PMC, contractors, and then, these authoritative figures among their teams that are all your allies help you to navigate with the rest of your team. So having those kind of people are really important. And I think lastly, just building, I think as women, I think we are good at communication. So having good communication skills, writing good emails, all of that, giving emphasis and importance to that would be really helpful. Writing good stern MOMs are really good. So I think all of these hacks, if we inculcate in their as part of their curriculum or sort of an elective that they're encouraged to choose, will be really helpful, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikita. So this concludes our questions and we are on time. I mean, 1 minute late, but yeah, that's great. So thank you so much, everyone. This was like really, insightful. I think new things or new food for thought has come out of this as well. I would like to conclude now, I'm really we are really glad and, thankful to all of you for joining us today. And we have gotten a lot of things to reflect upon, and thank you for sharing your comment, your experiences and your thoughts on this. So this will conclude phase 1 of this project, and the next one will be definitely capacity building, which we are trying to implement, or we would be collectively, I think we have to try and implement by 31st January, before we lose that, what do you call it, the drive and motivation that we have today with us. So what we will do from our side is to, make a document with all the ideas that we have discussed, put it together as a foundational document, and we will be sharing it with all of you who have taken part in today's session. And we will co-curate this capacity building in the toolkit that we've discussed. And I'll be getting back to each one of you with further details on this. I think by the end of the week, I'll be able to put everything together, and we'll be reaching to you soon. So thank you so much once again. Before we go, I would also like to ask you something. If it will be okay for us to I'm sorry. Yeah, if it'll be okay for us to share snippets of this on social media, if that's okay with you. Yeah, all right. And we are also circulating a form right now in the, my colleague Ritik will put it in the chat box for, there are other faculty and even, experts who have joined in, and since we had time limit and the number of people we can accommodate, if you have any other ideas and thoughts, you have listened to the whole conversation, and even the people who you've participated today, if you have anything further to maybe share with us, you can access this form and share your thoughts on that. We will be considering all of that to put this document together. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your commitment, and we look forward to seeing you soon for phase 2. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Ramya. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.